I never understood why you lacked confidence.
I get annoyed with myself sometimes.
It's ungrateful.
Yeah, that's true too. It is. I don't know what it is, man. I'm not good with receiving things.
But we're not talking about receiving. We're talking about perception. Like, you've been gifted.
I guess.
The Lord gave you 2 hands.
I love my 2 hands. My feet, they could be better.
Imagine like you're facing God, be like, listen, God.
You bless me, except with the confidence. Why? that would be my question. Like, come on.
Welcome to the show. It's been a while. We wanted to leave you with a finale.
Yes.
7 episodes. We figured an odd number because we're 2 odd people. Would have been great to go. But, you know, we both needed some time to handle real life.
Yes, very much so. Got a lot of family stuff going on. Family back in Buffalo. Got to deal with that. Been working, trying to maneuver through that. And just trying to get by, make sure everybody's safe and healthy, you know, and just trying to do everything we can to keep that positive mindset.
Yeah. So, Mark, why would you consider yourself an outcast?
Wow, that's a hard question. I would consider myself an outcast just based on my thoughts, my behaviors, my actions sometimes are seen by others as odd. You know, just the way sometimes people view the things you do. You know, I drive my car without listening to music.
What the fuck?
I know. Doesn't that sound crazy?
That
Well, listen, look, my radio broke a long time ago and then I just got lazy and never fixed it.
So it wasn't a matter of choice.
No, but now it is. Now it's a matter of choice. Like I drive home in silence, just talking to myself or beatboxing or something like that. So yeah, I would just consider myself an outcast just based on how my life went in terms of being able to fit in with certain groups. And oftentimes, even though people do like me, oftentimes I find myself feeling like an oddball or an outcast because sometimes like I'll be in the middle of a group. I won't be saying anything because I can't offer anything to the conversation or something like that. I'm sure many people feel like that, you know?
So is there like, to be an outcast, there's got to be like an in-group that you're outcasted from.
Right.
Think of yourself as an outcast. Is there a group you're referencing to that you have casted yourself out of?
In terms of like society, like I feel like my thoughts don't necessarily jive with what individuals think an individual who looks like me would have. Like most people would assume that I'm like liberal leaning or Democrat or all types of certain things. And in reality, I'm none of those things. I'm just me.
So when you say like look like you mean like black?
Right. And just I feel like for a long time, you know, black people were considered like this monolith. Like there was only supposed to be like one way of thinking. There was only supposed to be like one way to act. There's supposed to be a certain way to say things. There's supposed to be a certain way that you carry yourself, etc. And for me, for a long time, like I didn't abide by that. And a lot of it was my mom when I was younger. You know what I'm saying? Like she would always be on me. Wear a belt. Make sure your pants don't sag. Don't be cussing.
So you're saying a lot of that came down to your mama?
Yes. And like I said, like I don't want to make it seem as if like I'm this person who has been like ridiculed and outcasted by, you know, a bunch of individuals. It's nothing like that. It's just like that sense of feeling like you're a part of the group. You know what I'm saying? So like whenever like I'm a part of a group and they're listening to music or watching movies or things like I'm just not attuned to.
So when did you realize like you were black?
I would say this. It had to be when I was really young because my mom was adopted by a white woman in a white family. So I had been around white people a lot. But when I was like 5, I remember I had just used the bathroom. And I had went up to my mom and I go, Mom, do white people have white poop? And is that why my poop is brown? And and I remember she just laughed and she said, no, everybody's poop is brown. Oh. White people don't poop bird shit. It's just not how it goes.
They speak it. I'm kidding. We don't want to perpetuate hate.
That's right. But that had to be like one of the very first moments. Like I actually thought about it. I was very young and I thought about like, I have this brown skin. Is that why my poop is brown? Like, you know what I mean? And so that had to be like the earliest moment where I realized that like, you know, my skin was different. So there must be like differences between us, you know?
Wow. That's interesting. I mean, like, I've never had to deal with that question. Like, I've dealt with questions clearly about being Syrian, about being Muslim, but like, you don't look at me and be like, oh, that's a Syrian man right there. Get him out of this country. You know, it's not immediately apparent until I either speak my name or maybe, you know, in the span of a conversation, it'll start to come out that, okay, this guy was raised a little different.
Right.
So I never had that visceral, like, bodily experience with my background and my heritage. But I did deal with, like, you know, having to face these differences mentally. And I think for me, it was a lot of like imposing my worldview upon others growing up. It was my mission in elementary school to reveal the truth to everyone that Santa Claus is not real. Like, this was like the grand reveal that, like, it was like everybody was living in the Matrix and I was the one showing them, like, no, we're being usurped by machines. Santa Claus is exploiting you for material gain. But, you know, looking at me, you wouldn't know that. So I can't imagine like how it must have been to have to confront your body and the influence of your skin upon you. And it got me thinking, like, I know you set yourself out to define yourself independently of that. Right. But would you still consider like blackness to be influential, like, or one of the most influential things? Because people will look at you and in their eyes, that will be one of the most defining things about you. Like, yeah, Mark, he's black. Yeah. And he was homecoming king, but he's black. So,
right. I think I told you this for a long time. Like, I guess I wouldn't say it's the most defining attribute. And I would want it that way. Personally, because like when I go up to individuals, I don't want them to be like, yeah, he's the best black guy I know, or like he's the funniest black guy I know, or like that.
But once you put him in the bracket with all people, you know, he slides down about fourth, fifth place. But when it comes to black people,
he's right up there. You know what I'm saying? Like so for me, like personally, like, I'll put it like this. I kind of have a similar sentiment to what Morgan Freeman said about Black History Month. There's no reason why there should be a Black History Month when Black history is American history. It should just be taught throughout you know what I'm saying? Like there is no reason to separate, you know what I'm saying? And that's kind of like my mindset with race. And I've told you this, like for me, like race doesn't matter. However, I totally acknowledge the consequences of it, so on and so forth. Like I'm not going to deny those things. I can't control the thoughts of individuals, you know what I'm saying? So I do understand that it has a lot of influence, but for me, just for me personally, I would hope that the individuals that I hang out with, the people that have been in my life for a long time, I would hope that it's not the most defining attribute.
Tough question. Do you think that your decision to act consciously as an outcast, to, I guess, resist some of these expectations, was it not a response to your blackness, but rather a response to how others perceived your blackness to be? Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so. And obviously, you know me, I'm going to say both. But I would say that because a lot of times, like you and I have talked about off camera, what happens is people tend to associate things with a certain label. So like you'll hear black, now certain things are associated with it, whether it's from, you know, people of an opposite race or people within your same race. You know what I'm saying? People will all of a sudden come up with certain labels or descriptions of what you should be or what you can or can't be. And so for myself, like part of it was just, you know what, I just want to be me. But a lot of it was like people just saying things to me because of the way I spoke, and that was black or white people. You know what I'm saying? And so just taking that in and just trying to be like, look, I'm just trying to do me. I'm not trying to ascribe to what your definition of black is. I'm just trying to be the best person I can be and represent my family to the best of my ability.
And I think that, you know, I think about your Skittles story a lot and how you were in the staircase with a bag of Skittles.
A small one.
All
right.
Yet the stairs were flooded, clearly with a bulk bag of Skittles.
Don't get me started, bro.
Yet you were identified as the culprit.
Yes.
The criminal.
Yes.
No presumption of innocence, just
None.
guilty as charged.
Yes.
To the point where 5 years later, even the teacher we love and cherish so dearly, Ms. Noviak, we love you. But you're going to say that my man Mark is guilty of dumping the Skittles on the stairs when you weren't even there to witness what happened?
You see how it goes?
Fudge!
It's crazy, man.
Speaking of fudge, delicious.
Ooh, man.
And you clearly created positive associations with your own blackness, like your username, Chocolate Adonis.
Yeah. Yeah. You know? Yo, you funny as hell for bringing that.
No, I'm wondering, like, do you feel like, because I know as a Muslim
Yes.
in America, I had to do extra work to create positive associations with my faith identity. Because otherwise it was left to what everybody else feels about it.
Right.
Terrorist, towel head, 4 wives, married little children. What the fuck? Like,
Wow.
Whoa. That's not what I believe in.
Right.
But did you have to do that work for yourself to like create a positive link with your own blackness? Not what other people say, but what you feel. I don't know.
Ooh. I'll say, despite the things that went on at our school, I'm blessed that it wasn't as rampant or insidious as it is at other places. I would have to say that the things that came up or sometimes were levied against me were a fault of my own doing. I'm not gonna place that to my skin tone, because there were a lot of things that I did in school that just wrong place, wrong time. You know what I'm saying? And so because of that, especially when I was younger, because I'm not gonna front, like I was obnoxious, very immature. There were things that I did that most kids probably shouldn't do in the school hallways. We're trying to learn, you know what I'm saying? But I earned that reputation. Now, after I earned that reputation, did I have to work extremely hard to shed that reputation? Of course.
But I feel like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in some ways you almost weren't given a fighting chance, because like you told me in elementary school, one of your teachers said you were going to go to jail.
Yes,
like you were destined for it.
That was middle school, and yes, she did say that. But again, that's one teacher. I had numerous amount of teachers that were in my corner, looked out for me, created spaces for me to get my work done, created spaces for me to be able to do stuff, whereas I could get my work done in school and still be able to go practice after school, so on and so forth. I had so many teachers that were willing to do that for me. So I'm not going to take one ignorant teacher and say, oh man, because of her, like, I'm not going to do that. I'll just say she happened to be a very ignorant person because of my distractions in class. Like most people, they assume that, this child has no discipline. So therefore they're right on the path to ending up in juvie or prison and so on and so forth. Again, that's one teacher. You know what I'm saying? There might have been more, but I've only had one experience with the teacher saying something like that to me. And that was her. And that was it.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that although you often did respond and behave in response to stereotypes, in the big picture, the way others perceived your blackness had very little bearing on how you see yourself.
Correct. Now, granted, that did take time, because you know how it goes in a sense of community when people who look like you feel like you belong to that group, and all of a sudden they start to ostracize you because you're doing things that they don't agree with, like that hurts. You know what I'm saying? And when I was younger, I'm not going to talk about it again. Like I talked about in the education joint, that stuff hurt. Like hearing people say you're not black, you're an Oreo, you're this, you're that, like that stuff hurts. But eventually you realize that it's just ignorance. Eventually you realize that those individuals will learn. I'm not going to hold individuals to what they did in middle or high school and think that they haven't grown or evolved from then, But back then, obviously it hurt. Now, being older, I understand these things, And so I'm good now, I kind of have that mindset you asked me about. That's the mindset I have now, where it's like those things don't define me anymore. I don't get upset to those things, I just try to live my life and continue to educate myself.
Always. And one of the things that I love the most, and I think this is like a shared experience that people of color have, is like we can beef like really, really hard. We could end up fighting, choking each other, slamming each other on the ground, and then get up 2 minutes later, brush our shoulders off, and then we're back in the car.
Nah, that's very true. And this is the only thing I'll say. That seems to be a very man-like thing.
I don't know if I would put that as a man-like thing, though.
I would, only because I'll never forget. Like I hate when I start saying things about like people's race. But anyways, I'm not gonna say their names, but I was around these big white dudes one time, and just randomly they just started beefing, and the one dude ended up putting the dude through the wall. So, bruh. 5 minutes later, they're drinking beers and smoking together, bro. 5 minutes. And this dude really put him through a wall. Like, and I've seen this happen multiple times.
Okay.
Black, white, Muslim, whatever, you name it, bro. I've seen it.
I don't know. I feel like whenever I've had like even minor disagreements with white people, it's like catastrophic. It's like, yeah, I don't want to speak with that person ever again. I'm going to cut him off and cut him out of my life. You know?
Yeah. Okay. I get you there. Yeah. I've had moments like that.
And then, but with like my fellow minorities, maybe it's just because we're so used to like, and there's so much like we have to work through like decolonizing and,
right.
And, you know, reinventing ourselves independently of stereotypes and just like, I don't know. I just feel like we can beef and like get through it and still have that love for each other. It's just a uniquely ethnic attribute. I don't know. Am I being racist?
I don't know. What do they call it? An ethnicist?
Oh no. We got work to do. I got internal work to do. I gotta work that shit out. And that's the thing.
That's okay.
Just because you're Syrian doesn't mean you don't got that tendency to view things through a racial lens. And
that's true.
And so there is a lot of constant reevaluating and reassessing. So maybe I can beef with a white person and still love them at the end of the day. Maybe I just haven't had that strong of a bond with one yet.
Absolutely.
Hey, I have an application open. White people, I'm looking for a white friend to beef with and then have a milkshake with after. So
let's just call it spirited debates, not beefs.
Email me at podcastroutcast@gmail.com with a headshot showing how white you are. And
no, they got to hold up like a white card next to them to determine how white.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Yeah, what is wrong with us, dude?
Let's get back on topic.
Please.
With all this being said,
yes.
Do you believe though, at its core, that understanding your heritage, your blackness is important to knowing yourself? Maybe not defining you,
yes,
but knowing who you are.
Yes. I mean, we could call it blackness. That's fine. I would just say, learn where you came from. Learn your origination, your nationality, whatever it may be. Like I said, most people look at me, just call me black. I'm Haitian American. You know what I'm saying? So
that's important though to point out, because
without question,
blackness itself is kind of generalizing, right?
Without question. And it's the same thing for white too. This is a huge reason why I just don't like race whatsoever, because it generalizes a lot and it boxes in so many people and categorizes them into one category, when within those very categories there is just a plethora of different ethnicities, cultures, traditions, customs. Like it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But my bad, what was the question? I forgot.
Oh, it was just about how does blackness
yes.
I guess we're not going to use that term because it's a generalization. Just like Middle East, by the way. Middle East, first of all, many issues with that term. One, Middle East relative to what? Relative to Europe. So it's a Eurocentric term. Number two, Middle East, that's a big ass swath of land encompassing Arabs, Kurds, we got Turks, we got so much. And then when you just say, oh, he's Middle Eastern, we're like, oh, okay, am I Kurdish? Am I Arab?
Right.
Like,
there's so many. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But we're trying to strip away influences and get to the core of who we are.
Right.
And clearly our race and our heritage is just about as close of an influence to being a part of us without actually being a part of us, if that makes any sense. Like, school, the internet, we talked about finding love. These are experiences that we have engaging with the real world. Whereas it feels like race, heritage, is that a part of us? Or is that another one of these external things that we kind of have to grapple with?
Ooh, that's a great question. Mm-hmm. In terms of the external battle, I would just say the way in which some interpret the culture or the customs or the tradition and the way in which they try to push it onto others. I feel like that pressure externally really gets to people. You know what I'm saying? In terms of knowing your heritage and where you're from, it's incredibly important. Just to pay respect to those who came before us. You know what I'm saying? Without them, we wouldn't be here. So it's just vitally important to learn about what they went through, what they overcame, and how they were able to exist. You know what I'm saying? That's how we keep their memory alive, you know, passing down those stories. And you and I have talked about, like, one of the great things about human beings is language, the ability to communicate, the ability to pass down stories and information from generation to generation. You know, it's extremely vital. It's why we're here.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that act alone is like one of the most human things you can do.
So do you think it's important to develop a general understanding of like humanity in terms of, well, Black humans have gone through these struggles and Arab humans have gone through these struggles and white humans have gone through these struggles? Or do you think it's more important to cultivate an intimate understanding of where you came from?
I would say both. And I would not only teach people about the struggles of each individual, I would teach them about the progress. You know what I'm saying? The advancements, the way in which they were able to overcome. Like a lot of people constantly talk about Black slavery and so on and so forth. But there were a number of individuals who were able to prosper during those times. For instance, there was a man by the name of Robert Smalls. He was, if I'm not mistaken, he was a slave in South Carolina. He ended up commandeering a Confederate ship.
The original GTA. Get the fuck up.
So I'm gonna skip all the details and stuff like that. But it's funny. I like that. But also, while commandeering the ship, he actually made stops and was able to pick up family and stuff like that.
Wait. He straight up took over a Confederate warship.
Yes.
Commandeered it and what?
Yes.
Picked up his boys.
His family.
Said, we out here.
Yes. Brought it to the Union Army.
Get the hell out.
He was celebrated. This led to Lincoln enlisting Blacks into the Union Army.
No freaking way.
Like, bro. And then on top of that, after the Army, he became a Black politician and served in the House of Reps. So, like I said, the more we can learn about our history, not just the slavery and the struggle, I think the more we can learn about how individuals were able to prosper and overcome these things, like it can be really, really important to those cultures, those ethnicities. And I think we need to do a better job of learning those things.
100%. And like, I know nothing about, sadly, Black excellence during the period of slavery.
Right.
And prior, I know of like a prince. There was a great Black prince that was brought in as a slave and he wrote very enlightening literature, but I barely know anything.
Right.
But one thing we all know and we all need to acknowledge and we all need to face is how quickly Black America went from mass enslavement to pioneering art, culture, science, technology, politics. Like how quickly, like we have people whose grandparents were slaves who are, millionaires.
Right.
Like boom.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, I get it. There's obviously a lot of issues still plaguing America, but we can't just ignore progress and advancements that took place. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't just ignore that.
Absolutely.
And it's just crazy. Like you said, there was something else I had learned about. I believe it was Booker T. Washington with a man by the name of Rosenwald. I believe his name was Julius Rosenwald. And this was during discrimination, Jim Crow, all of those things. Booker T. Washington went to him and he ended up putting up $4 million to help build schools in the Deep South because, there was an education gap. Whites at that time were, I believe, like an 8th grade level. Blacks were like 5th grade. This was like 1920 to like 1940. With the help of Roosevelt, who raised $4 million, Booker T. Washington and members of the Black community were able to raise $5 million. And then they built 5,000 schools. Now think about this. This is during Jim Crow. This is during Jim Crow. This is when discrimination was probably at its peak. People were getting lynched, so on and so forth. And in the Deep South, they were able to build 5,000 schools. Within 20 years, that education gap had shrunk to 6 months. So basically, so think about that. 6, like that's crazy.
Anything is possible, folks.
And these type of advancements just get blurred over. And it's like, we can't do that. We have to acknowledge these things.
Well, do you think America benefits from a narrative of oppression?
Oof, that's a heavy question. I'll just say this. I do believe that there are certain individuals who use race and oppression of minority or marginalized individuals for their own gain. I truly believe that. But again, that's not to say that these issues don't exist, right? You know what I mean? But there are individuals who take these issues and they use it for their own gain, to pump up their own name, whether it be for political clout, whether it just be for, street clout. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, they do it so they can pump up their name, and now they're being regarded as such. We just got to really talk about things truthfully. You know what I'm saying? Talk about the bad, but also talk about the great things that happen here in America.
One of the things going into this series that I identified as one of your challenges, maybe in knowing yourself, is that you resist labels, you resist definition, and I'm getting a sense that part of it has to do with your experience with the word Black and how faulty of a label that is. Is that why you avoided defining yourself for so long?
I think so. Like we talked about, a lot of times the things that we're associated with being Black, at least on a mainstream level, were just things that I guess I couldn't jive with, And so I guess kind of like in the back of my head, I was like, I am Black. However, I'm not that Black. You know what I mean? Like in that sense.
Or that kind of Black.
Right.
Or...
Yes. Yes. And it's just a wild thing to think about, I don't know. Like when I was younger, I never thought like I would be having these type of conversations or have to deal with those type of things, especially from other Black individuals. You know what I mean? But that's just the way it is. And like we talked about, for myself, I didn't want to define myself for a long time. And it's not just Black, it was even Haitian. A lot of times with my family, like they didn't like the things that I was doing. You know what I'm saying? Especially as I got older, like they didn't like that I was being in musicals. They didn't like that I was acting. They didn't like that I was somewhat assimilating to the American culture more so than the Haitian culture. When I got earrings, you know what I'm saying? My pops, same thing with my brother, thought we were gay. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like just things like that. And, just dealing with that in the house, just like, you see things like that and you don't want to define yourself as like, I'm not that type of Haitian. I am Haitian. I am Black, but like I can't ascribe to that way of life because I just, I don't agree with it or I don't jive with it. And so it was just that's where it really stems from.
So it seems like in your life, labels were almost weaponized against you.
Right.
Like, I'm going to refer to your Blackness, but only in terms of whether or not you meet this standard,
right,
or your Haitianness as a standard that you
right,
are falling short of because you got your ears pierced, and we don't do that in our culture.
Right.
So I can understand then why you would just be like, nah, screw all the labels. I'm Mark, and you know what?
Hear me roar.
Yeah. But clearly, even, or maybe not, rejecting those labels left you, or would you say that it left you a little bit aimless, wandering?
Without question. It's something that I'm still struggling with or trying to figure out. Do our values really come from like what we're taught at an early age? Like what is the culture that exists within our household that cultivates the values that we eventually have when we're teenagers, adults, etc. Now, granted, obviously I'm respectful, so on and so forth, common decency type stuff. Like
sometimes.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm basically trying to understand the value of these boxes, like super boxes yes, as big as Blackness, yes, as big as being a Muslim. Like, do they have any value in helping us find ourselves? Because you turned away from all these labels,
yes,
but then you ended up wandering, lost, and now you're in mama's basement,
Yes,
like,
no. And see, I guess that's the question I still have. Does that culture that exists within the household, whether it's from religion, the race you have, etc., is that what you need to better help figure out who you are? Does that better help define your values? You know what I'm saying? Or does it not? For myself, I'm only one person. I feel like at times I feel so non-cultural. You know what I mean? And I feel like I'm not doing right by my ancestors.
That's a heavy burden to bear.
Right. Absolutely. And
like nobody wants to disrespect your ancestors.
No one, literally no one, you know?
And I get that feeling a lot too. Like apparently my grandfather was like some like prominent imam who stood by the Turks during the First World War and saw through the British deception of the Arabs at the time and told them not to betray the Ottomans. And then here I am like, I don't know who I am.
I feel you. Because that's how I feel too. I'm like, you know what? Gosh, 1804, first independent black nation. Like, okay. And I'm here like, I'm struggling.
Oh my God.
Know? So it's tough. But I really do feel like because I fought so long to not have labels, to shed labels and so on and so forth, I didn't really take the time to like really sit down and ask myself, what do I really value?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of times, at least, I don't know, you tell me if I'm wrong. Do you think that growing up in a more religious household helped you, at least early on in your life, have a sense of values that made you feel more whole?
For me, it was a way to distinguish myself, a way to, look at the world with confidence and conviction. There is a God. We're going to die one day and answer to our deeds.
Right.
So act accordingly. Very simple principle. And I think in my youth, like not my youth, in my childhood.
Yes.
In my childhood, that kept me out of a lot of pitfalls.
Okay.
But when I grew into a young teenage boy,
adolescence,
that unholy manufactured phase of imposed sexuality and materialism and all that. It's like everything that Islam was safeguarding me against became a virtue in my teenage years. Like, you got a bone, you gotta... I'm being serious though.
No, for real, yeah.
And then it created kind of like a challenge, because what was valued as a Muslim, chastity, even honesty, we don't think about how our culture kind of tacitly approves dishonesty. Like you watch Friends. Them mother effers be lying through their teeth to each other. But it's okay because they're all safeguarding their friendships, you know? But I think it's interesting because although like being Muslim and being black are associated through the lens of like the American hierarchy of minorities versus majority, they are completely different things. Being black is a judgment placed upon someone because of the color of their skin, because of something that they did not choose. It is what it is. Whereas being Muslim is a value. It is a system. It is a set of beliefs, and it does definitely directly bear on how I operate in the world, whether it's being a child and trying to illuminate the truth of Santa Claus to everyone, or whether it's, my decision not to drink, my decision not to collect interest. That's a big one. And that's what scares America, folks. Interest-free banking. No, but it's cool that we're kind of going from race to religion, because I think we're also what we're really talking about is values.
Yes.
And what I loved about how you are kind of grappling with race is that you talked about like knowing the truth versus seeing a label. A label like blackness is so general, it has no actual truth to it. And it has like a mythology, though, a false mythology oftentimes. But when you dig and you start to know how it relates to you, your Haitianness related directly to, liberation, whatever perseverance, strength.
Right.
Those are the truths we got to get to. For me as a Muslim, I don't even know where to start, to be honest. Like, because it's such a big thing. It really is such a big thing.
Let's start from the beginning. What made you have this crusade against Santa Claus? Let's start with that, because clearly that had to have established within the household, and then you brought it out of the household and brought it into society at school. So talk about that.
Well, if you want to know the truth, it was probably jealousy. Everybody else was getting toys.
Ah, okay.
But I wasn't, and I needed to understand that. And I realized, oh, there's a truth. There is no Santa Claus. I'm not being skipped over by this old man in a sleigh,
right?
You know? No, everybody's parents are out there getting them gifts. And I feel like they should know that, okay? Because I'm not a bad kid.
That's really, really funny. And because you were a little kid, it's cute. And low-key sad too, though. But continue.
But I will say this. I think Islam did drive in me this thirst for like knowledge and truth. And, you know, even as a little kid, it was always like, okay, well, you know, there's the way things appear, then there's the way things actually are.
Right.
You know, and Islam is really, a lot of it is about understanding the unseen. A very simple way to look at the unseen world would be like jinn, angels, spirits. But the real profound reality of knowing the unseen is being able to perceive the value of an action or a teaching. You know, the perceived act of me pouring you a cup of tea, you could perceive it in many ways.
Right.
You know, but the real truth behind that action is, I feel like I want to share with you, you know, something, right. You know, sharing.
Yeah. It's
a virtue. You know, I don't know if that's any relevance at all to the discussion of influence, but
I think it is.
I think for me, like being a religious kid, there was a lot of experiences with guilt,
okay,
which shaped my identity.
Okay, that makes sense. So why do you think you felt so much guilt and shame? What aspects of it brought about that? Is it going back to seeing how the American life kind of contradicted what your values were? Or was it kind of like we talked about, this idea of what a Muslim should be, and your parents kind of seeing within you that you were kind of deviating from that?
So being Muslim is like, you almost subscribe to an ideal form of being a human. Concretely speaking, it's like the Prophet Muhammad. Like we want to be like the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The Prophet Muhammad, a cat fell asleep on his shirt, so he cut his shirt so as not to disturb the cat and wake him up. You think I'm cutting my t-shirt for my cat? No. So many times when I would be faced with these choices where I would see the ideal and I would fall short, I'd be like, I'm not a good enough Muslim. You know? And and then growing older and then having to face these other values, it's like I wanted to be a Muslim, but I also wanted to be a hip American teenager. Like I wanted to party so bad, but I couldn't party as hard as everybody else. So I almost felt like I was insufficiently American, you know, because I wouldn't drink at the party.
Right.
And I would come home and feel insufficiently Muslim because I missed 3 prayers while I was at the party, not drinking. You know, it's just like never being fully anything.
Right.
Was a challenge.
Wow. I never actually thought about it like that. That had to be hard to be between the two, because again, you were trying to find your group that you belong to, and each one was telling you that you're inadequate.
Right. And then there's like just like this whole like struggling with the modernism and postmodernism, where being religious is seen as an intellectual deficiency, that like, oh my God, you're following some sort of inherited dogma from over 1,000 years ago. You're not a free thinker. Let me tell y'all something. And I want y'all to really think about this. You can never break out of a box. You can only go from one box to another. And I feel, and I firmly feel that, because if you choose to abandon religion, let's say, and then you want to follow science and reason, well, science isn't even a belief system. It's a method. So what we determine as scientifically true today may not be the case 100 years from now, you know? So we're always following something. For me, following Islam, I choose to do that because I think it's very simple, it's very principled, and it gives me a lot of freedom to actually be an individual, but to operate within a framework that's supposed to protect me from hurting others. I read this great line. It said, the purpose of revelation is social harmony. If we all went around doing whatever the F we want, would there be social harmony?
Probably not. Well, let me ask you this, because I know there was a point that you talked about how people kind of have like this ill feeling towards religion nowadays. Why do you think that came about? Not just because of postmodernism or anything like that. Do you think that came about because some people feel that religious individuals are always trying to proselytize or convert individuals? Do you feel like they always have this air of superiority to them? What do you think it is that caused individuals to have this type of feeling towards religion rather than the feeling that you and I are talking about, which fosters a sense of community, a sense of belonging, so on and so forth? How did we get from there to having people look at religion as it's just a bunch of people who feel superior to others?
One of my boys in high school, non-Muslim kid, he developed an interest in Islam through seeing how me and my Muslim brothers operate. He started coming to the mosque. He started hanging out with us, playing dodgeball, playing football, loving the community, sitting in the talks, loving the view Islam gave to the bigger picture. But then he came up to me one night and he was like, yo, man, I really love Islam. I want to be a Muslim, but I don't think I can stop smashing.
Wow.
You know? Mm-hmm. And I think while yes, there has been throughout history an element of, religious people making other people feel like shit, or even worse, distorting faith for selfish worldly gain, like creating armies, whether it's ISIS, even MAGA is an army of religious authority, supposedly pro-life. We're safeguarding the fetus. We're better than you.
There's a large majority of them who do have that type of mindset, without question.
Crusades.
Without question.
Shit. So while there is that, I think people are uncomfortable with how religion forces you to regulate yourself. And in essence, deny yourself. It's interesting because this whole journey, as us two podcasters and as Americans, we feel like we need to determine who we are as individuals. And the second something tells you that you cannot do what you want, or you will be punished, or you will experience guilt. We don't want that in our lives. So I think people just want to smash and they don't want the guilt.
I agree with you. I feel like a lot of times people want to be able to experience pleasure within their vices without really feeling any type of like consequences or like you said, shame or guilt for it.
Yeah.
Because most people know that their vices are wrong. Like, let's be honest. Most people know, like, maybe I should calm this down. Maybe I shouldn't do this as much. But because it brings them pleasure, they're going to keep doing it. You know what I mean? So I guess it's about finding pleasure not only in your vices, but again, down to our values and our virtues.
Yeah.
And
I think you can have morality without religion per se, but I think religion gives me another little thing, which is hope, which in some ways is life-saving.
Yeah.
Especially when you're lost and you're wandering and you don't have a clue. You don't have a clue who you are or how you're supposed to act, but you have principles.
Right.
And then you have hope in justice in an afterlife. And whether or not that's empty, that's up to each of us to decide. That's why it's faith. That's why it's in the heart. That's why it's a belief.
Right.
We believe it. You don't see it. You believe it.
Correct.
But having that hope for me is very important because, the world is a nasty place. In my own personal experience as someone who deals with a lot of mental health struggles, being grounded in knowing that there is a conscious force, it's helpful. And then when it's amplified by a sense of community, all of a sudden me and my Muslim brothers can pray together and we have a shared language where we can talk about these struggles. Like, it just helps me feel more at home, you know?
Without question.
And I think knowing yourself is not a process of defining who you are, because I don't even know if that's even possible sometimes. Like, we're called human beings. We're not human doings, you know? So it's not so much seeing yourself for who you are, but finding a home, locating a home. That's been a big revelation for me, because it helps me deal with the fact that we are always changing and sometimes we don't meet the standard we set for ourselves. But what is a home? It's built out of a foundation, right? For me, that foundation is Islam, and it's the guiding principles on how I live my life.
Right.
But then you can furnish your home. So within that home, you know, I bring in the things that are important to me: my filmmaking,
absolutely,
my video games, anime, my friendships.
Right.
And then you got to be careful. What do you put in your home? Am I going to put a poisonous snake in my home? You know, cocaine. That's a part of me. No.
Right.
So I don't know. I just wanted to share that with you guys, because I think it can be so hard to know who you are sometimes. Right. But maybe if you look at yourself as finding a home, you know, like, what do you find home in? What do you find comfort in? And then having that home, and then knowing where it is, so that when you wander away and you get lost, you find your way back. You know, you're not always going to perform to the optimum version of yourself.
Right.
But if you know where your home is, we can come back
and recalibrate.
There you go.
You know?
Moral compass.
That's right. Talk about developing your own autonomy within a religion, because like you said, being that individual within a religion is difficult. Now, I know for you it's something you struggled with, maybe still struggle with, but just talk about that a little bit, because like you talked about, a lot of people deny religion because they feel as though they don't have that autonomy. They feel as though they have to live this righteous life where there's nothing they can do.
Yeah.
And so
I'm not a Muslim, I'm a Muslim. I'm me.
Right, exactly. So just talk about your struggle with that, or how you were able to overcome that, or what you're doing to deal with that now, because I think it's important.
I think that's ongoing, and I got to think about it for a sec. It's a very important question, and I think especially Muslims deal with that, because being Muslim can seem like such a box, right. And just like blackness,
right,
Islam has become a generalized thing, where all Muslims are perceived to be one way.
Right.
And it's generally this Arab Islam. But do you know there are like Pakistani Muslims who create prayers in their violin, Indonesian Muslims who have their own cultural flavor, and Turkish Muslims who come closer to God through their dance, spinning, whirling dervishes. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's very important for all of us to have principles and values. And I think defining yourself is ultimately knowing what your principles are, knowing what your values are, because we're going to be playing different roles throughout our life. So what do we rest on to keep ourselves true?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't look at Islam as a box, you know, that keeps me from realizing my true potential. Mm-hmm. I look at it like a foundation that holds me together, so that when I take on a new role in life, I'm grounded and I'm acting in accordance to a moral code that will hopefully keep me unscathed, whether it's person to person,
right, or
in the afterlife. You know, we're all probably going to do a little bit of time in hell. I'm trying to keep that time as minute as possible.
Yeah. So are you saying like the afterlife is more like Dante's Inferno, different stages, levels of hell, depending on the actions you committed? That depends upon the level and how long you'll stay there. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, basically, like if you murder your mama, you're going way down and you probably ain't coming out.
Yeah. I believe there's 9. You going to 10. If you murder your mama. Like,
nope. But I did take some $20 bills out her wallet growing up.
Ooh.
Cop a dub.
Oh man, what is that? Level 2?
Probably.
Maybe.
Hopefully level 1. Like, I mean, like, there's a lot worse. There's a lot worse things I could have done. Like, I don't know. I never stabbed anybody.
I might have, like in elementary school for fun, just with a pencil.
I did draw a knife. But that was like setting a boundary. It's very important to set your boundaries.
You know what? I get that. I'm trying to think, what have I done? I took my mom's car once, but it was because Ruben came to my house and it started snowing, and you know he doesn't wear socks or shoes. So I didn't want him to walk home.
So those are the best situations, like when you do something immoral for a moral reason.
Yes, yeah, I love it.
I stole my mom's car, but my boy didn't have socks. He was stuck outside his house.
Had to drive him home. You know what I mean?
That's some Robin Hood stuff. Maybe you'll be 1 foot out, 1 foot in. Maybe you'll have 1 foot in heaven and the other foot in hell.
All right, maybe my left foot. I don't like my left foot as much as my right foot. So
Ruben's socks ain't gonna help you there though. At the end of the day, there's only so many ways I think you can look at the world.
Right.
There really is. And then, so whether we like it or not, whether you decide to be a Muslim, whether you decide to be a rationalist, whether you decide to be Christian, Buddhist, atheist, you're making a decision, you know? And you ain't the first person to come up with that decision, honey. You ain't that unique just because you're like, oh, I'm not Muslim, I'm an atheist.
Right.
So are so many other people around the world. Congratulations.
Well, let me ask you, what is it with this whole unique thing? Why do you think everybody wants to fight so hard to be unique, this one of one? Why do you think that is?
It must be our egos, right? It is very arrogant to assume that you could be
one of one.
Yes. Like, I'm the only person in the world that thinks this way and acts this way and behaves this way.
Right.
But here's the beauty. We are all unique. And you don't need to actively resist anything to be unique. And I think this is part of the trappings we fall into, especially as minorities. We define so much of ourselves through the lens of resistance, resisting what others believe blackness is, resisting what others believe Islam is, to stake our claim in the world.
Right.
But where's the positive element of actually saying, this is what is important to me, and this is who I am, and I may share this with others. We don't want to share. Maybe that's what it comes down to. Greed.
Yeah.
It's like, this is how I see the world, and this is mine. Like, yeah, we want to hold on so tight to the ring,
right?
You know, without realizing that the ring is destroying us.
Yeah, I think it's that kind of, like you said, with the whole ego thing. I think that a lot of people just want to know that their life was important before they go. You know what I mean? Like, everybody wants to carve out this unique almost path so that, say, when they do pass, their legacy can be defined by this, you know, certain thing. You know what I'm saying? And I that's what, at least that's my mindset of it. Obviously, I'm not going to ascribe that to a bunch of people, but for me, I think it's that people do, in essence, we all want to be remembered. We all want to live forever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And one of the ways we do that, like we talked about early, is through family, heritage, being able to pass down those stories. And another way is creating or producing or doing something so memorable that it lasts basically until the end of time.
Now, I wonder if in the absence of a God, that need to be unique and to define yourself becomes way more pressing.
That's a great question.
How can you feel like your actions don't matter or that you're not an individual when you know that everything we do is being observed by the greatest force in the universe, and that there will come a day when everything we've done is acknowledged, validated, understood. Yes, judged, but only insofar as we caused harm or created benefit. Like, you are important. Your actions will be remembered. Maybe not in this life, but trust that they will. And I think the beauty of, at least the way I see faith, is that it pushes me to act not simply to be remembered, celebrated, acknowledged, unique, but to act according to a higher ideal that, you know, I will have to be held accountable to. It's no longer about defining myself to the world, but offering the world something to make it a better place, to be of service, because that's the ultimate calling. And those are the deeds that the universe, God, cherishes most. So it's no longer about you when you have that grounding. Of course, that's the ideal. I hope everybody remembers me. I hope all of you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, actually. I hope you all share my stuff, like it. I'm trying to get rich and famous. And hopefully go to heaven.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, likewise. I kind of have this belief that God is basically within us all. And so for me, like, I try to live my life in accordance with love and kindness, and sometimes I fall short.
Wow.
You know, but that's what I try to do. So that's kind of where my faith lies. Like, I believe that God is love. You know what I'm saying? And so you could do things in accordance with love or in accordance with God, whatever you want to call it.
I submit wholeheartedly. I just think there's an interesting resonance to two people who were raised with different religious frameworks, but arriving at the same truth. And I think that this is a great way to wrap things up. Come back to yourself. Come back to your true self.
Yes.
Locate that place. Find your home. Know that we are all given, created with everything we need to be
That's true.
Good, functioning people.
That's true.
These influences, they're like storms. You know, they come in, they dump a little rain on you, they dump a little snow on you, they blow you away in the breeze. But if you have a home to come back to, you will be protected and safe. Don't be so hard on yourself, folks.
I love it. You see, you always end the show so well that it's like, I don't want to say anything to ruin such a perfect moment. So what I will say is that although this is our final episode, we would love it if you went to our YouTube channel to check out our other episodes. We will be posting highlights and segments, but this will be our final episode of season 1.
Possibly the whole series.
Just throw it in there like that.
We don't know what happens. You know, we didn't make any money on this. So if you're listening to this and you got money, please finance our production. You can email us at podcast4outcast@gmail.com. Now, that was a completely materialistic way to end this. So I'm going to bring it back to, if you found this podcast to be helpful, illuminating, if you have any questions, if you have insights you want to share with us, just because we're closing the season, that does not mean we will not be checking our email our social media.
Yes.
We would love to have your feedback.
Please reach out to us. Like, we really just want to talk to you guys about different perspectives. We think that learning from other individuals can help make everyone's lives better. We appreciate everybody who watched. This was huge for us, especially for me. I know AK has been in the creative field for a long time now, and he knows better than anyone that I doubt myself tremendously when it comes to being on camera, being on any type of stuff. So just being able to do this with him, it means a lot to me.
We're all in this process of discovery, and I think being able to, I just come home at the end of all of this is great. Like, we're all gonna make mistakes.
Yes.
But you know, you can always find your way back home. Otherwise, you'll be like Nelly Furtado.
I'm like a bird,
I can fly away. I don't know where my soul is. I don't know where my home is.